What is up, people of YouTube? Welcome to Another Day in Paradise. For those of you guys who are new, my name is Cody McCarty, and today we're going to be taking an in-depth look at Sony's 200 to 600 G lens. Now, the first thing that you're going to notice about this lens is just how massive it is. Comparatively to the 100 to 400, it is pretty much double the size. It is bigger than the 100 to 400 when fully extended, and it is a hefty lens. The benefit of the size of the 200 or 600 is it's all internal zooming. So you don't have a barrel that extends out and comes in, sucking in dust, and you don't have to rebalance gimbals when you have it mounted on one. Now, Sony sent me this lens as well as the 12 to 24, which the video will be linked up here for that review, for 2 weeks to test and review this lens. I'm gonna kind of spoil the end result. Is I am planning to keep my 100 to 400. I prefer it over the 200 to 600 for a number of reasons, but I am keeping the 100 to 400, and I can recommend this lens to a select few, but we'll get into that a little bit more. For my test, I used the 61 megapixel A7R4. Now let's talk about the physical lens for a minute before we get into the pixel peeping and the video footage that I shot with it. I love the fact that the zoom range is a quarter turn, whereas my 100 to 400, it is a long turn. So that is a huge benefit, the fact that you have such a short throw, especially like if you're photographing a bird in flight or you just want to get close to the action really quickly, you're there. It's so much quicker. You don't have to adjust your hand and to rotate it almost a full 180 degrees. Now this lens has the same steady shot switch. It has the same autofocus, manual focus switch. It is the same range limiter for the autofocus, so if you wanted to go over full, or if you wanted to have a minimum of 4 meters to the full range, and then 10 meters to the full range. So I find those very useful, so it doesn't get focus on, let's say I'm shooting through a bush, it doesn't focus on the bush. And then it has 3 modes instead of 2 on the 100 to 400 for optical steady shot. One for panning, one for jerky motion, and one for less jerky motion. I can't remember the differences, sorry guys. I do find the image stabilization to be significantly better on this lens. So that is a +1 to the 200 to 600 versus the 100 to 400, especially in video. In video, I didn't see any micro jitters or anything like that like I do with the 100 to 400. So the 200 to 600 definitely wins in optical image stabilization. It is a learning curve to have the zoom ring up front and the focus ring in the back, but I can almost understand why Sony did this, because you are going to be supporting the lens from up further, just because it is very front heavy. The front element, I believe, is 95. Ah, 95? Really? Wow, that is just insane. So you would need a 95 millimeter filter, ND filter, or, you know, polarizer. Oh my God, that element is just huge. Just put in comparison. Look at that. That is just insane, the size difference there. That just blows my mind. Now, I tested this lens out in a couple wildlife areas. I hiked with it a little bit. I do not recommend, if you plan to have a backpacking wildlife lens, the 200 to 600, I cannot recommend that. But if you aren't going far, or if you're driving up to where you're gonna photograph the wildlife, or if you're on a safari, this lens might check all your boxes. Now, I tested this for safari on the Disney World Animal Kingdom safari thing that they do, because I really wanted to be able to try and replicate how it would do for video and for photo in that very jerky truck. I feel like this would be the easiest way to give you guys an example of how it would do on an actual safari, since I can't afford to fly to Africa. So I took this Disney World, photographed some animals, and we're gonna cut to the examples there. Now for the settings, they're included at the bottom. You have the ISO, the shutter speed, and the aperture. You'll see that the reciprocal rule did not need to be followed. I was at 1/800th of a second, and the shots are pretty sharp. And with the next image, let's do a 1000% crop. And you can see that the image is incredibly sharp. I'm actually really impressed with how this lens was able to resolve the 61 megapixels. Now the next one is truly a testament to the image stabilization. 1/250th of a second on a moving jerky vehicle, I got a relatively sharp image. If you zoom in though, it does show it's not tack sharp, but I am shaking on a truck and it's at 1/250th of a second, so I'm pretty impressed. Here on the same truck, if I went up to 1/400th of a second, you can see that at a 400% crop that this image is plenty sharp. So the stabilization in this lens is truly impressive. I will say 100%, if you plan on shooting wildlife video, the 2x teleconverter, that is what it is for. Getting that extra reach for video is just amazing, and it let me get shots that I just wouldn't have been able to get. So if you're looking at getting a teleconverter, I would choose the 1.4 teleconverter. It's going to be sharper, but the 2x is really good for video, and I get pretty great results with that. Now the continuous autofocus was probably my biggest gripe with this. I found that it would miss focus a lot. I found that it was a lot slower than the 100 to 400. It would hunt more often than the 100 to 400, and the focus was not as reliable as the 100 to 400 GMaster. A lot of people have said that this lens is amazing, and on an A9 body, I'm sure it would be great, but on the R4, it did not focus as quickly, and it missed focus more than I would like it to. I can understand why this has the G and not the GM brand. As for sharpness, it seems that people have tested this with the R3 and found the 200 to 600 to be sharper than the 100 to 400. But my experience with the R4 and those extra 20 megapixels is that you start to run into an issue with resolving power, and the 200 to 600 isn't able to quite resolve all those megapixels, so I find the 100 to 400 takes a sharper image. Now allow me to give a better example of the sharpness. I only did a sharpness comparison at the telephoto end of 400 millimeters, since we're going to be comparing the sharpness at the 100 to 400's longest reach. I generally think that's where you're going to use the 400 the most, is at the 400 end. So it's not the most scientific sharpness rating, but here I have the 200 to 600. Looks like I was 3 millimeters off, my bad. But if we zoom in on this corner, you can see right here, let's go 3 to 1. Right here you see this little, kind of looks like a hair that was right there. Let's go over to the 100 to 400's image, and it is sharper, it is crisper, and it's at 5.6, whereas this one is at 6.3. So right off the bat, there is a sharpness difference. Even with the lens at 5.6, there is more sharpness on the 400 millimeter. Now if we go over to the 6.3 image that I took, the hair is still visible on this, and you can see that it's a little sharper. So not noticeable if you're zoomed out, but if you're pixel peeping, the 100 to 400 is going to be a sharper image. I had these at the same distance. I know it's a little crooked, me changing the lens and mounting it from the collar on the lens is the reason that it was off balance and slightly shifted. But there you have it. Mind you, this is a loner lens, so it could have some margin for error, but based off of this experience, I definitely would not sell my 100 to 400 to get the 200 to 600. Now I think this concludes my review of the 200 to 600. Once again, if you guys are in the market for the 12 to 24, I'm gonna have that video linked down below, so you guys can click on that and check out that review. I also wanna plug that I do daily vlogs, so it's not always gear content on here, but I try to make it as fun as possible, so if you're looking for some entertainment every single day, feel free to subscribe and follow along. But this is where I'm going to conclude this video. Thank you guys for watching.